G'day mate, 40 here. So I've been able to figure out why Australia's so rich. Because it's not wasting a lot of money on cloth for bathing suit bottoms. It's just going with just a little strip, and therefore we've got all these resources that we can use for other things. So the beautiful young women here, they never wear anything but bikinis, it appears. Yeah, hardly any cloth covering the bum. So Australia then plows, all that money that is saved from buying schmata to cover up the bum, and they plow it into building mines and liquid natural gas facilities, and just frees up so much economic resources and might. It's just able to transform the whole country. So Australians not particularly modest, but I haven't witnessed any harassment. All right, all the beautiful Sheilas in bikinis, all the young women looking so fit, and there's no harassment. It doesn't even feel like there's sexual tension. It's just a very relaxed, sporty, fit atmosphere. And then we get to save all that money that could otherwise be spent on schmata, clothing materials and all that. We get to save that and just invest in our country. So that's how Australia got so rich. We don't waste money on fabric to cover up the bum, mate. G'day mate, 40 here. So they say Sydney's one of the most expensive cities in the world, but I just don't see it. Like, I find accommodation very reasonably priced. Food, I've been eating so well. My brother described me as a locust. Just been going through the mangoes, only the really expensive stuff, the peaches and the nectarines and the apricots. Man, they say Sydney, one of the world's most expensive cities. I just don't see that. I got more money in the bank now than when I arrived in this country. Like, I haven't paid anything for accommodation. I've just been bludging off my sister and my brother and their friends. I haven't had to pay a thing. Now, food? Oh, I've eaten like a prince, mate. All the expensive fruits, like the mangoes, the $3 mangoes, mate. Didn't cost me anything. My sister bought them, or my brother bought them. I even did some work for my brother, and I made some money legally. Used my tax file number here in Australia. All by the book, mate. All very legal. Now, transportation, no worries, mate. I hopped on board with my sister, drove all the way from Sydney to Tenham Sands. So it's about the distance from Los Angeles to Seattle. Didn't cost me a thing, right? Now, my sister may have spent $350, $400 for the petrol, but no worries on my end. Now, I do have a couple of complaints. The price of ice creams here is just exorbitant. Like, I've been spending like $5 just for an ice cream, just for like a peppermint ice cream. Now, Australian ice creams is really good, but $5 for an ice cream, mate? $5.50? Oh, I can feel an ice cream coming on. So I've spent about $100 on a New South Wales Opal card. It allows me to use public transport in New South Wales. So about $100 for public transport. We're here at world famous Bondi Beach, mate. And I bought a few ice creams, all kosher. And that's about it for my expenses. Oh, I bought some protein bars and some protein powder. But I don't get what all the fuss is about. As far as I'm concerned, Australia's been very reasonably priced. Good thing that I've got older sister and older brother and a bunch of friends to bludge off. All my friends here, they've all taken me out to eat. Like, I didn't have to pay. Eating at like fancy vegetarian restaurants, mate. It's been tops. Like, just filled out, really expensive food. Didn't cost me a thing. Took a trip down to Currumbong, went back to the Bong to Avondale College. Didn't cost me a thing. Hitched a ride with a mate. So I'm navigating the cost of living very effectively. No worries. G'day mate, 40 here. Caution, do not climb over the fence. So back at Watson's Bay. So I've hiked about 15 kilometers from Coogee, about 10 miles. Braving the cliffs. And then over there's Manly. Right, so you can take a ferry to Manly. And then this used to be like the military, the Australian military used to control this. So used to have a fort, I assume, or guns set up there. But now we've gone slack, man. We need our guns here at Watson's Bay to fend off any invaders. So culture war pretty relaxed here. So hold on to hope. There's always help. So never heard an angry word about masks. Like, no, I haven't seen anyone abused for wearing a mask. Like, when I see someone wearing a mask outside, well, I mean, I guess some people might question how important that is, but I don't know about you. I just abide by the World Health Organization or their guidelines. So culture war is fairly muted down under. People seem to just be having a good time, having a barbie, going to the beach, watching the cricket, eating mangoes. My God, is this beautiful or what? Oh, mate. So, I mean, they do have protests here against vaccine and mask mandates, but not terribly intense. So I've been in Australia now 7 weeks. Don't think I've heard a cross word. Life is really good in the eastern suburbs of Sydney. So that's Watson's Bay just right ahead. That's where I was yesterday. So do not climb over the fence, guys, for your own safety. Keeping an eye out for any invaders. Okay, don't see any yellow peril. I think we'll be right. And then, that's the Sydney Harbour Bridge, mate. Dead ahead, Sydney Harbour Bridge and the Sydney Opera House, and then to the left of the Sydney Harbour Bridge, now dead ahead, is the CBD, Central Business District of Sydney. So I started walking at noon, took a break for a nice swim at Bondi Beach, world famous Bondi Beach. Now I think I'm approaching the apex of my trip. Gosh, I love the cliff walk, man. There's something about cliffs. Just can't stop exploring Sydney. Ah, you beauty. You beauty. Anything better than the sound of the ocean, steep cliffs, a fine harbour, beautiful opera house, very clean and high functioning central business district. There's good old Manly. We love Manly, don't we, folks? We're too happy to hate here in Sydney, mate. People are always complaining about the high cost of living here. I just don't get it. Right? I've hardly ever had to reach into my pocket just for the occasional ice cream, right? And to ride public transport, which is very clean, very efficient, very friendly, very happy experience. A lot of people going on and on about the high cost of living. I just let my sister and my brother pick all that up. And my Jewish friends and my non-Jewish friends and my viewers, my loyal viewers. Well, put their hand in their pocket for me, come out with $250. It's very nice, it's very nice. Sorry I lost my gimbal. I know you usually look to me for really high quality live streams. I'm going to come back with a DJI combo kit. $500 of live streaming excellence. Okay, to the left is Bondi, to the right is Manly. Hold on to hope, guys. Don't jump. Hold on to hope. We love our Sydney, don't we, folks? Got to use all of my remaining 10 gigs that I paid 50 good bucks for. And it runs out in 2 days. So I'm just going on a live streaming marathon. So I was here yesterday. I think I want to take the ferry. Of the Sydney Harbour Ferry. G'day, mate. So yesterday when I came with my Watson's Bay, I only had my Oppo, my cheap Android phone. Now I've got my high quality iPhone, so provide you that high definition experience. Okay, still looking for any culture war down under. Not seeing much of it. Not doing much culture war here at Watson's Bay. Oh, walked 15 Ks today. Had 2 good swims. One at Coogee Beach at 6 a.m. Another one at Bondi at 2 p.m. Thing probably coming up on 6 p.m. here. Monday evening. Cliff Walk, I love you, mate. So glad that we can share this experience together. Wherever I go. take you with me. That's just on Shabbos. Here we go. How about it? Not much culture war going on at the moment. There's Manly. Australia's a very masculine society. The manly man go to Manly. So watch out, unstable cliff edges, slippery surfaces. It's all on the line here. I love a good bushwalk. So I don't do this kind of hiking much in LA, unless of good hiking trails. So I've become way too insular. I just tend to ride my exercise bike, my stationary bike at home and watch movies. Maybe I need to get out a bit more. Take advantage of Los Angeles. So to the right of me will be the ocean, to the left of me will be the harbour. So we're at Watson's Bay, no climbing. Oh, g'day, mate, 40 here. So, does Glenn Lowry host YouTube's Edgiest Show? I mean, I just watched his show with Amy Wax, and Amy Wax said positive things about Jared Taylor, talks about how she reads American Renaissance, how she disagrees with Charles Murray, that white identity politics may not be such a big disaster. She makes the commonsensical point that if identity politics is good for some groups, then it's got to be good for all groups. So how can black identity politics and Jewish identity politics and Latino identity politics be kosher, but white identity politics is not kosher? So Glenn Lowry consistently hosts YouTube's Edgiest Show. I mean, he had Charles Murray on talking about his new book, Facing Reality, about disproportionate rates of crime committed by various racial groups, and talked about cognitive differences between various racial groups. All right, this was all on the Glenn Lowry show. So if you don't know Glenn Lowry, he's a centrist black intellectual who shows some sympathy for right-wing perspectives, and he throws his show open to a lot of right-wing thinkers who've been exiled from polite conservatism, such as Amy Wax and Charles Murray. So Amy Wax said she strongly disagreed with Charles Murray that white identity politics, is just the worst thing ever. And it's interesting that Glenn Lowry said that white identity politics would be absolutely awful, but didn't make a particularly strong case for why. So Glenn Lowry says we should try to do away with all identity politics, but I think the way we're just wired is that we're wired to identify with our group. Like we're most interested in people who are similar to ourselves. So good on Glenn Lowry though for hosting Charles Murray and Amy Wax. So Amy Wax got into trouble for this latest interview because she talked about restricting Asian immigration because she was skeptical that the spirit of liberty beat in their breasts. And I think that was a particularly strong argument. So Amy Wax does not make the case for significant biological differences between the races, but what she sees as self-evident is that there are big cultural differences. So she tried to make a case against essentially non-white immigration. So she argued that the United States is a civilization from the West, and that when it comes to immigration, we should choose people who are most compatible with our majority population, which in practice would mean more white immigrants, fewer Asian and African and Latino immigrants. So she notices that conservatives are very scared of talking about race, right? They don't want to be called racist. But Amy Wax goes about as far as you can go and still be in the national conservatism, Yoram Hazony conference spectrum. But quite the interesting discussion between Glenn Lowry and Amy Wax. I think it came out December 20th. And you're looking out Bondi Beach there, directly straight ahead. So it's about 5 kilometers probably from here. So one downside with the Amy Wax Glenn Lowry discussion is that they would keep interrupting each other. So they should be very WASP about it. Just allow one person to speak at a time, allow that one person to make their point, and then allow the next person to take up. G'day Robert, how are you mate? So you're looking at the eastern suburbs of Sydney. You're looking at Bondi, and out beyond Bondi is Watson's Bay, where I was yesterday, and out beyond that is Manly. So guess what? I walked past Adam Gilchrist, like on this trail, all right? About half an hour ago, I walked past Adam Gilchrist, the former Australian wicketkeeper and just terrific batsman. When he would score runs, it'd be at a very high rate of knots. He was like very exciting to watch. Adam Gilchrist, man, he could belt out the runs. I just watched him on KO Sports. That's the live sports streaming app here in Australia, about 1 million subscribers, and they did a documentary on Monkeygate. So Andrew Symonds was a part black player on the Australian national cricket team. So Andrew Symonds, I think, had a father who was Caribbean and a mother who was Scandinavian. So Andrew Symonds could, pass for Southern European. He could almost pass for Italian. So he played for the Australian national cricket team for about 20 or 30 tests. Then in a test against India about 15 years ago, there was this Indian batsman who would call him a monkey, and Andrew Symonds took really strong exception to that, and then made an official complaint. Right? Made an official complaint about Monkeygate, and then went through the appeals process. And anyway, things didn't go Andrew Symonds' way. What does being black have to do with it? Well, it's because he was being called a monkey, so he was arguing that he was the object of racial vilification. And so initially the Indian batsman got a 3-match suspension. but then it got overturned, and like Andrew Simons, already American Lucas fading away. So Andrew Simons was like very quick to take offense. So when an Indian player simply like patted Brett Lee, the fast bowler, like Andrew Simons like went and took offense and like got in the guy's face, and it was a very tense match. Like the umpires had made some dubious decisions that went against India. And anyway, the point of Monkeygate is that after bringing this allegation, Andrew Simons' life, kind of collapsed into alcoholism. Your face looks thinner and more weathered, like that Crocodile Dundee guy. Yeah, so his life collapsed, and yeah, a lot of sun exposure. So I got a medical checkup while I was here. I got my Australian Medicare card, and I got a couple of spots to watch for potential skin cancer. So I've been getting a ton of sun, like a ton of exercise. So I walked about 12k yesterday out to Watson's Bay. So anyway, I think this is like fairly common. Andrew Simons brings this racial vilification complaint, and then because the complaint doesn't go his way, he collapses into alcoholism. He was already a heavy drinker, but he then collapses into alcoholism. It ends his professional cricket career. His life just falls apart. And I've seen this again and again. Better watch On the Beach to see what's coming. Yeah, I saw On the Beach. I saw both versions, the 1950s version and the Australian remake. So I see that. I'm not sure I've seen The Quiet Earth. So I remember this woman, this friend of mine, she was quite attractive, and she was an attorney, and she brought a complaint for sexual harassment, and it didn't go her way, and it just destroyed her life. She went from being hot and charming and outgoing and just a ton of fun, but when her sexual harassment complaint didn't go her way, her life absolutely collapsed. Sing the Waltzing Matilda. Waltzing Matilda, waltzing Matilda, you'll come a waltzing Matilda with you. Aussie cellular sucks. Anyone else have complaints about Australian cellular production? But yeah, a lot of people bring a hot button controversial complaint like Andrew Simons did, or my female attorney friend, right? When you bring that kind of hot button racial vilification, sexual harassment complaint, and it doesn't go your way, people are going to fight back, right? Because nobody wants to be on the losing end of such a hot button discussion, hot button controversy, and then people just fall apart. So it's all tempting to who did Georgie Girl? Yeah, Georgie Girl. She's like 80 years old, mate. I'm not even sure she's still alive. So no, I'm not gonna be dating the singer of Georgie Girl. You'd be a fool to turn your back on those roots. Walking is my mental health practice. In winter I walk less. I notice I'm more depressed and anxious. Well, you can walk year round here. But I tell you one thing, in Sydney, the weather forecast, the worst I've ever seen. So today was supposed to be mostly sunny, but it was like raining for much of the last hour. So the Seekers folk group. Mate, I don't date women over 40. So when they say it's raining, often it'll be sunny all day, pretend she's still 20. And when they say it'll be sunny, often it turns out raining. The most unpredictable weather here that I've ever seen. So Amy Wax, oh yeah, so I saw an interesting article by Ezra Klein. You don't date women over 30. I actually saw an interesting article by Ezra Klein, I'm not going to deny it. And it was in the New York Times. And he talked about the difference between politics for power and politics for emotional catharsis. So I don't normally get much benefit from Ezra Klein, but here you go in the New York Times today. So this is how he starts out. Talks about a new book which I just downloaded. So in his 2020 book, Politics is for Power, Eitan Hirsch, a political scientist at Tufts, sketched a day in the life of many political observers in sharp, if cruel terms. Yeah, light rain is cool, so I don't mind the rain. It's just, I can't believe the weather forecast is so inaccurate here. So this political scientist says, I refreshed my Twitter feed to keep up on the latest political crisis, then toggle over to Facebook to read clickbait news stories. Yeah, not everyone, a lot of people are fit here, and almost no fatties. So this is political scientist Eitan Hirsch. Says this is his daily routine. I refresh my Twitter feed to keep up on the latest political crisis, then toggle over to Facebook to read clickbait news stories, then over to YouTube to see a montage of juicy clips from the latest congressional hearing. I then complain to my family about all the things that I don't like that I've seen. So to Eitan Hirsch, that's not politics. It's what he calls political hobbyism. So is that what we're engaged in, guys? We engaged in political hobbyism rather than the bloodthirsty pursuit of power. Yes, my family would object if I married a kangaroo. So would my rabbi. So political hobbyism, right? Is that what we're doing here? It's a national pastime. So a third of Americans say they spend 2 hours or more each day on politics. So how much time do you spend each day on politics? Of these people, 4 out of 5 say that not 1 minute of that time is spent on any kind of real political work. It's all TV news and podcasts and radio shows and social media and cheering and booing and complaining to friends and family. What if the kangaroo were of the Hebraic faith? So real political work is the intentional, strategic accumulation of power in service of a defined end. It is action in service of change, not information in search of outrage. All right. So when you come here to this show, all right, this show is about service of change, action in service of change. Not so many snakes in Sydney, but more outside of Sydney in regional Australia. All right. Are you about action in service of change, or are you seeking information in service of outrage? So outrage and fury, they're only useful as a fuel for getting something done. And outrage and fury, should not be the ends. So Ezra Klein says, yeah, very few no street gangs in eastern suburbs Sydney, maybe western Sydney, but overall Sydney's like the 4th safest city in the world. So Steve Bannon has made it his mission to recruit people who don't believe in democracy to serve as municipal poll workers. So this is interesting, right? On the right, we always think that people on the right are, not paying attention to where the power lies, and that they're getting, outcompeted by the left. And Ezra Klein says, I'll say this for the right, they pay attention to where the power lies in the American system. Is that true? Does the right pay attention to where the power lies in the American system? In ways the left sometimes doesn't. Steve Bannon calls this the precinct strategy, and it's working. Suddenly people who have never before showed interest in party politics started calling the local GOP. I never get outraged. I convince myself my political interests are purely ethnographic. Disavow. I say people who've never before showed any interest in party politics started calling the local GOP headquarters, crowding into county conventions eager to enlist as precinct officers, ProPublica reports. They show up in states Trump won and in states Trump lost, in deep red rural areas, in swing voting suburbs, and in popular cities. So I didn't realize this. So is this energy transferring from Trump? Or is this independent of Trump? The difference between those organizing at the local level to shape democracy and those raging ineffectually about democratic backsliding, myself included, remind me of the old line about war. Yes, I am able to vote in Australia. Amateurs talk strategy, professionals talk logistics. So right now, Trumpists are talking logistics. Yeah, Ezra Klein is calling out the right for catching on to what the left has been doing for years. So we do not have one federal election. We have 50 state elections and then thousands of county elections, and each of those ladder up to give us results. So Congress can write some rules and boundaries for how elections are administered. State legislatures can make decisions on who can vote and not vote. But counties and towns are making decisions about how much money they're spending, what technology they're using, and the rules around which candidates can participate. Yes, it's 1:04 Monday afternoon here. And it looks like the Dallas Cowboys are going to be matching up against the San Francisco 49ers. It's a very overcast day. Like, it's hard to think that there'd be that much, radiation. Like, look at that, very, very overcast. I am wearing sunscreen. And I'm wearing my Aussie hat. Right. So, yeah, Glenn Lowry. I think he's got like the edgiest show on. Right, he's got the edgiest show on YouTube. Right. Okay. Look at that beautiful sky. Yeah, it's like an Aussie keeper.
They were like all pinging out of the water. It's just fucking
Oh, very fair dinkum shoes, mate. Here we go. They're a bit worn, but Skeechers, very comfortable. Very fair dinkum. How much weight have you lost since arriving in Australia? At one point, I was down like 7 pounds, but I think I'm pretty much back to where I was. So I'm about 165 to 168 pounds. Okay, very disturbing story here from the New York Review of Books. I hope this does not get out. So, an expert on Frantz Fanon, who was a black political activist. Adam Schatz is a white guy writing about him, and he writes in the New York Review of Books that he was essentially the victim of masked polar bear hunters. Says my attackers came out of nowhere on a familiar street and didn't even take my wallet, but they robbed me of something, a New Yorker's self-assurance. Whoa! Whoa! Thank you so much for the super chat. Very exciting. And it says there's something morbidly instructive about being beaten up by people who are obviously relishing your humiliation. This is in the New York Review of Books. It's on top of Steve Saylor's blog. To read about the pleasure people have taken in cruelty is not the same as experiencing it firsthand. So it just was published January 7th. Before I set upon, assaulted and robbed at roughly 9:15 p.m., half-block from my girlfriend's building in Chelsea, I had been having a rather good day. I just outlined the last chapters of my book on Frantz Fanon, radical West Indian author of The Wretched of the Earth and Black Skin, White Masks. So let's have a look at... the Mighty Park. There are tons of lefty prosecutors in moderate towns because the left realized turnout is crazy low and some funding and turnout effort is effective. Exactly. So maybe the right is learning from the left on how to do politics. So this white guy wrote a couple of books on this radical West Indian activist. And he was feeling a surge of adrenaline after writing his book. So he put on his headphones to listen to a podcast conversation with his friend Randall Kennedy about his new book on race and civil rights, Say It Loud. Randy's voice was the last thing I heard as I turned right on West 17th Street and 9th Avenue, where my attackers were lying in wait. There were 3 young men, barely old enough to be called that, 16 or 17, and almost immediately I was on the pavement. I don't know if I was jumped or if I was thrown to the ground. What I remember is a thud, the sound of my body meeting the concrete. Well, not a lot of this in Sydney. As soon as I fell, they began taking turns kicking and punching me in my stomach, my upper thigh, the right side of my waist. They didn't say anything. What I do remember is their laughter. They were chuckling amongst themselves as I absorbed the blows. Their voices sounded youthful and immature, and they moved like gangling teenagers. But they knew something that had never occurred to me, that my prone, defenseless body could be the source of considerable entertainment. And then I got to disavow, he names the race of his assailants. And then the article cuts off because of the New York Review of Books. Yeah, Tinsborg on Twitter talks humiliation robberies in Sweden. They have a word for it. And then, yeah, a lot of humiliation crime going on in Sweden as well as New York City and other places. So society encouraging masked men to roam the streets. At the same time, society is encouraging certain groups to feel extremely aggrieved towards white people is a recipe for polar bear hunting. Sounds like a scene from A Clockwork Orange, yeah. Like, it would never occur to me that beating someone up could just be, great entertainment. But apparently it is. And these people vote for Alvin Bragg, right? I think you say they never learn. I think they will. Right? I think they will. Even people on the left get tired of get tired of massive amounts of crime. Science Museum boards up display on early human migration because it is non-inclusive. Man, how did the woke take over all the museums? Oh, did you guys know that NPR is having a white supremacy crisis? So all these black players at NPR have quit. So Crystal Marie Fleming says the problem at NPR is white supremacy. That so few are saying this explicitly is telling indeed. But yes, very telling indeed. So Audie Cornish, host of All Things Considered, is leaving NPR. She wrote on Twitter, she's joining many of you in the Great Resignation. So did you guys realize that NPR was all about white supremacy? Then interesting academic study here. Half of blacks say they prefer to be robbed or burglarized than to have unprovoked contact with cops. So they'd rather be robbed by their own kind than have to deal with the police. So Steve Saylor writes about the lost age of Los Angeles triumphalism. Yeah, we can't have evolved that much since the 16th century. People back then loved public executions and humiliations as well as animal torture and bear baiting. So do you remember the 1985 TV series Half Nelson? Starred Joe Pesci, plus 3 NFL football players, Dick Butkus, Bubba Smith. So Los Angeles was really fashionable from about 1984 to 1990. And the 1984 Olympics turned out to be great, embodiment of morning in America. And Los Angeles triumphalism basically reigned until Dick Cheney turned off the aerospace budget spigot, right, Steve Saylor, after the fall of the Soviet Union, which ushered in Los Angeles' 1990s time of troubles of riot, earthquake, and O.J. Simpson. And do big football players still get cast in TV shows? Right, that was a big thing in the 1970s and 1980s. Oh, so there's a new documentary, Expedition Content, and it's about the making of a famous old 1963 anthropology documentary, Dead Birds, about tribal warfare in New Guinea. And this new documentary has almost no images because you wouldn't want to stereotype the headhunters looking like headhunters. So Expedition Content, virtually no images about tribal warfare.
Speak to Stroke Australia in Tasmania.
I mean, who cares about New Guinea headhunters, right? Really boring. So Michael Rockefeller, the son of the sitting New York governor, almost certainly got eaten by these headhunters in New Guinea, and New York Times does not mention this in their review. Because why would anyone be interested in learning that young Mr. Rockefeller was devoured by cannibals? Oh, so ex-man swimmer Leah Thomas finally loses a women's swimming race to a streamlined ex-woman. Regular women's swimmers left in the dust. So now in women's sports, various ex-men are now winning. Is Adam Schatz of the Hebraic Persuasion? I'm not sure. Sure sounds like it. Wow. Shootings in Sweden are up 1,268% since Angela Merkel's mistake back in 2015. Who would have thought that shootings in Sweden would go up 1,268 points? Elliot Blight, you don't care about out groups? Bro. I'm not sure you're allowed to say that. Base cannibals. I remember LA in the 2000s. Skid Row was terrifying, but Venice Beach was pacified. Semi-pacified. There are lots of people in New York who won't put up with polar bear hunting. Russians, Hispanics, Dominicans, Muslims. And then they're going to keep putting up with Alvin Bragg, the left-wing DA, right? Scrolling through the chat. I never get outraged. I convince myself my political interests are purely ethnographic, says the mighty Buck. Yeah, not many street gangs here. One of the safest cities in the world. Twitter is pure entertainment for 99.9% of users. Joe Klein is smart, but a hack. He's a good bellwether of the wonk left. Yeah, he's occasionally interesting. Defend the Constitution, it defends you. Walking is my mental health practice. It'd be a fool to turn your back on your roots, mate. Want to see you with a chum bucket. Ford ain't coming back to LA. Need to watch The Quiet Earth. Don't remember seeing that. Okay, I must walk on. G'day mate, 40 here. So I went for a dip in the Coogee beach and there were like these 4 beauty queens wearing their tiaras and they were mucking around in the surf and taking selfies with their iPhones out in the surf. Oh, a good time, so refreshing. So anyway, point of etiquette. So I know that my audience is particularly attuned to questions of courtesy and etiquette. What's the right thing to do? So someone asks you to go for a walk, right? And then they take an incoming call. Like how long? What's the etiquette for how long can you talk on your phone to someone else when you're on a walk with another person, right? So I think it's like 5 minutes, right? So let's say you're going on a 2-hour walk. If you take one call for 5 minutes, not a big deal. But 10 minutes, I think is too much. That's where I put my foot down. So yeah, I was the recipient of that the other day, and I really didn't like it, right? It's no fun walking along with someone who's on a phone call, right, where you only hear one part of the conversation. So on the other hand, like I've gone for a walk and I wanted to sit down and read the Wikipedia entry on Garth Whitlam, right? To me that's a different thing because you may be disengaging from the other person but you're not on the phone, right? So you're not subjecting them to a one-way conversation. So I've been on dates, like a first date, and the woman was taking calls. Like she probably took like 3 calls on our first date, and that was it. All right, 40's got standards. I made up my mind right there. I'm gonna put up with this. I never wanted to go out with her again. But then, for whatever reason, she became hyper interested in me. Like kept tracking me down. But all I could think about was, you disrespected me taking all those calls on our first date. Like, why would I want to go out with you? So, when you invite someone to hang out, go for a walk, what's the appropriate amount of time that you can get on your phone to someone else? Like, obviously, a matter of life and death. Or if there's a lot of money at stake, then I can understand taking the phone call. But if it's not urgent and if there's not a lot of money at stake, then I think like 5 minutes should be the max. Oh, g'day, mate. 40 here. So I made this decision to fly to Australia for 2 months in the space of about 8 hours. So 24 hours before I got on the plane, wasn't even considering this. I just suddenly decided, hey, like there's an opening in my schedule, I'm gonna do it. And I thought, oh, I'll go for 3 weeks, I'll go for a month, maybe I'll go for 2 months, maybe I'll go for 3 months. Like I had the opportunity to go for 3 months, and I figured 3-month vacation in Australia, like living with other people in their space, that's too long. And I have found myself missing LA much more intensely over the past week, right? So for the first 6 weeks, 7 weeks that I was here, it was just, oh man, I gotta move to Australia, this is awesome. And now over the past week, it's been more, oh, I really miss LA, I really miss my own space. And when you make this like sudden decision to fly somewhere for 2 months, and I only take a backpack of stuff, you're always gonna forget some things. So what do I most regret not bringing from the States? So number one, my activator, that chiropractic tool, that fantastic way of loosening up tight muscles and kind of putting everything back in its proper place. So I've been doing so much exercise on this trip that all sorts of muscles that I didn't realize I had were getting sore, and really wish I brought my activator. I really wished I'd brought like some nasal strips, like for my first night here, before I could go to the store and get some. Just like opening up the nasal passages so I could breathe. Like it's awful feeling. It's the middle of summer here, so when it's hot, and you're in unfamiliar space, and you just can't seem to breathe sufficiently. It's like, not a good feeling. And I wish I'd brought the mount for my cam. So I've had to do all sorts of things to try to mount my cam when I do the professional 2-3 hour shows. So thinking about regrets, because I lost my gimbal on Friday. All right, I was at Bondi Beach, and I love Australian mateship. Okay, so g'day Tony. So I love the culture of mateship in Australia, and so I've made a new mate here in Australia, and both times that I was meeting up with him, both times I've been between 10 and 15 minutes late, which is really unlike me. Really unlike me. I'm a very on-time person. So I was having such a great time Friday afternoon doing a live stream from Bondi Beach that I decided to stick the gimbal in the sand with the phone on it and just go for a dip in the ocean, the beautiful Bondi Beach, diving in. I didn't check the time because I was live streaming. I can't see the time while I'm live streaming. And so by the time I got out of the ocean, it was 1:40 p.m. and I was due to meet this bloke at 2 p.m. about 2.5 kilometers away. And so I hate being sticky from the ocean, so I jumped in the showers, and then my gimbal was all filled with sand, so I washed it off. And in the course of like rushing all that together and then rushing off to meet the bloke, what does the gimbal represent? Rushing off to meet my new mate, I leave the gimbal behind. So $70 gimbal, so I'm thinking of going with the DJI Creator combo. It's like $400 or $500, but it's got like 4 different audio things. So anyway, I felt a lot of regret losing my gimbal. And then another place we stayed earlier last week, I left behind my iPhone wired headphones, earbuds, and a t-shirt. So far, like the sum total worth of everything that I've lost in Australia is less than $100, but like it annoys me. Now I don't have the gimbal to give you that high quality smooth streaming experience for which you really look to 40 to give you that really high quality streaming experience and I can't provide that to you because I lost my gimbal. So anyway, thinking about regrets. So I'm back in Australia, and I'm meeting up with a lot of people from childhood, people from various times in my life, or relatives, siblings, whatever. And many of them have far outpaced me in many areas of life, and so it's really easy to be consumed with regret. And I experience regret kind of mildly and episodically. I basically made a mindset change something like 5 years ago, approximately, where somehow it came into my head, or maybe I heard it from someone, that given who I was, I could not have acted differently in that situation. So I find that really helpful. Like, I don't tend to have long-running regret because of that mindset. Given who I was, I could not have acted differently. And yeah. So I've obviously made a bunch of blunders, a lot of mistakes, gone wrong here. I've made a lot of choices that were not as healthy as they could have been, right? And in particular, when I've hurt other people, like my careless words have caused some of my girlfriends to cry, and I've wounded my parents and family and relatives and friends, with careless, cruel, selfish decisions. So I want to have regret for that. Where I'm hurting other people, I want to have regret for that because that's good for me. Not in the obsessed sense, not that it totally gets me down, not that it removes me from power and energy. In fact, like having an appropriate sense of regret for hurting other people, that does give me power, because it helps me to realize, I can see what I did wrong, and I can go in a new direction. And I'm a responsible adult, and I want to clean up my side of the street, and I want to clean up the messes that I created on my neighbor's side of the street. So having an appropriate level of regret for the harm that I've done others, but then with regard to myself and my own choices, my own happiness, my own financial well-being, my own status, the bad decisions I made, just to understand, given who I was at the time, I could not have acted differently. And I don't know that that's true. Right? I'm not going to claim that's true. I just find it incredibly helpful perspective. Like, given who I was, I could not have acted differently at the time. What a beautiful cricket ground here at Coogee. Right? So, we grow up with a combo of genetics and then early life experiences, and they tend to profoundly shape us. So, for example, I think I became particularly attention hungry because I grew up where I was moved around a lot of different families, because my mother was dying of cancer, and my dad was so busy looking after his dying wife, looking after his career as the chair of the religion department at Avondale College, and then looking after my older brother and sister. Like, he had so many obligations on his time that I lived with a lot of different families in my first 4 years. So that probably produced an insecurity and a thirsting for attention, a craving for attention, which then manifested in an awful lot of live streaming and blogging. All right, so what I find interesting to meditate on is what is the tension underneath the craving, right? So we can crave chocolate ice cream. Some people crave to exhibit their genitals to people in public, right? There's a crime, but it's also a craving. And other people crave the distraction of TV sports, and other people just crave the distraction of junk food or Netflix. But what's underneath that craving? What's underneath that craving is some kind of tension. All right, there's some part of reality that one is not accepting. Right, that one is not at peace with oneself and with others. Like, I think I really like the big book perspective that underneath all our suffering and cravings and addictions is that an inability to accept reality. And so when I'm troubled, what part of reality is it that I'm refusing to accept? So refusing to accept that I was careless about time on Friday, that I didn't want to be late 2 times in a row. So then I got distracted and left my gimbal behind at the beach because I'm human and having such a good time live streaming that I forgot the time. So I've been moving around. I've slept in a lot of different places over the past 2 months, and so it's really easy to lose, headphones, lose some clothing. So part of the reality that I've been having trouble accepting is that I'm careless and I'm sloppy and I'm human, and in the course of packing and unpacking here and there, I'm going to forget some things. But luckily I haven't forgotten anything too important. About to get stuck into my taxes 2021, so I remember once I sold a car. I was so worried the other day. I thought that Mr. Ford's telephone cam got nicked down at Bondi Beach. No, for whatever reason, I set up my cam, I set up my gimbal, went for a dip in Bondi Beach, and then the live stream just cut off. So by the time I got back to my gimbal, the live stream was off. I'm not sure why it cut off. So it's probably time for a new gimbal. And so I could, obsess about the loss of a $70 gimbal and think, no, I need a better gimbal. I need to spend the money for that DJI Creator combo pack. I shell out $400 or $500 so I can provide the high quality live streaming experience that you expect. So over on those Coogee cliffs there, someone fell or jumped, a man in his 20s, Saturday afternoon, 3 p.m. my time, and fell about 20-30 meters to his death. And it's the first time I've heard police sirens and ambulance sirens while I've been in Australia. So this is Coogee Beach. This is where I came on my first morning here in Australia, and I walked along Coogee Beach and I had a revelation that I want to move here. Right? It's like, this is amazing. So definitely a higher quality of life available in Australia, in Sydney. This is one of the safest cities in the world, right? So I just realized how circumscribed my life has been in Los Angeles, because I don't want to walk around at night. It's like, oh, I just don't want to bother, going to that event at night. Don't want to deal with the traffic, or don't want to deal with threats of crime and dysfunction. And so my life has become smaller over the past few years as we've had this surge in crime in LA. And then I get to Sydney and I think how much bigger it could be, right? There's nowhere I need to fear going in Sydney, particularly the central business district and the eastern suburbs, which is where I'm at right now. And riding public transport is a perfectly lovely experience. You just get to meet your fellow Aussies. Interacting with strangers is so much more pleasant. For one, they speak English, and two, we share a moral universe, right? That crime is bad. I can leave my iPhone on the beach and my gimbal on the beach. I can leave, a credit card. I could leave a laptop on the beach, and it's still going to be here, when I get back. And so, coming here and standing here, it makes me realize, how much smaller my life has become in LA, because of the threat of crime, because of the dysfunction, because you may not even be able to speak to half of your fellow Los Angeles residents, and you don't share much in common with many of the people that you see in Los Angeles. So in Australia, it seems to be much more of a shared moral universe. There's this Anglo-universal morality, right? There's very little sense in Australia. I haven't encountered this thought yet, that it's okay to treat out groups differently than you treat your in group. I have not encountered that thinking out loud. Now, obviously, people do things that they then don't say out loud, but I haven't even encountered that thinking. While in America, it's widespread. Like many blacks think, oh, you get to treat non-blacks differently than your fellow black, or many Jews think that, or many Southern or Eastern Europeans think that, or so I'm living in universal morality here as far as the rhetoric, and rhetoric's important. Like rhetoric shapes people, right? The words we say, we create the words, but then the words we say create us. Like I'm immediately driven to defend something that I say out loud, and my mind will, work 6 ways to Sunday, coming up with, why what I've said is true, and right, and important. So, looking out there to the east, right? The sun rises in the east, right? And then sets in the west. So, social cohesion means shared moral universe, which means universalist morality. It's not okay to rip off outsiders. It's not okay to treat outgroups shabbily. It's not okay to treat people badly just because they're not in your in-group. That's one thing I'm enjoying about Australia. Then, kind of realizing what I've missed living in multicultural Los Angeles with such low social cohesion, such low social trust, and very little sense of a shared moral universe. So in any insular group you get into in Los Angeles, pretty much there's the ethic of, what you do to outsiders doesn't matter very much. It's what you do with the in-group that really matters. Oh, mate, I want to go for a swim. What a great way to start the day. So also thinking about that craving, right? That craving that comes up for food, or for porn, or for sex, or for alcohol, or for drugs. What's the inattention that it's trying to distract you from? I love that idea. I've got about 10 gigs on my phone plan. I paid $50 for 15 gigs of data, and so I'm determined to use it all. I want to use all my data before I fly back to California. So I'm just going to keep chatting here. So I've got about 10 gigs of data, and I've only got about 4 days to use it. So, man, people are fit here. Right. Good way to start the day.